your name and office so that I have a record of that. So if you guys will throw that in the chat box, just so that I know who is in the class. Be appreciated. Okay. So we're going to pick up from where we talked about on Tuesday. Tuesday, we talked about, well, actually, before I do that, any questions? So do you have any, Joaquin?
No, I mean, like this other fellow said last time, I value what we're doing. I feel like I'm eating it up like candy and I need it.
Okay, cool.
It's very valuable. So
Good.
I know I'm the only one here. I know, but I appreciate you taking time for this today.
Yeah, sure.
It's a big deal for me.
Yeah,
You know?
good. So what about you guys on Zoom? Any questions? Feel free to unmute. If you have any questions you want to talk about.
I don't have any questions. I just think this is awesome.
Oh, cool. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to continue on then. So, so just as a reminder, we talked about 4 pieces last week. The first was that your focus has to be on setting appointments. That's the number one thing that has to happen. Second was then that we have to connect. And so or create some rapport with people. So you got to create a connection or some rapport. The way that we do that is through asking questions. And then we want to repeat and affirm. We're going to repeat and affirm back to them, repeating the last 1 to 3 words or just summarizing the concept of what they said. And then after we have done that, then we're going to affirm it. So we're going to either say, oh, that's great. Or if it was something that wasn't great, we're going to go, oh, I'm sorry, that's horrible or whatever. So
Be empathetic.
yeah. And then the other piece of it was the empathy is jumping into, hey, if I were you, I'd feel the same way. So for example, I was talking with a agent this morning, actually, about a potential client that he has. And one of the things that I brought up to him was approaching to the client, because this potential client is not ready to buy yet, but they want to go out and see houses. And so now with that empathy piece, what I said is you need to go back and say, hey, if I were you, I would feel the same way. I would want to be going out and looking at properties because you're excited about wanting to do it. So remember, the empathy is just, if I were you, I would feel the same way, or I would do the same thing. And by doing that creates the connection rapport because people like people who are like them. And so when you say, if I were you, I would feel the same way, you're validating them and making them feel like what they're doing is right. Okay. So that's the connection piece. Then once we've created the connection, then we want to create some value. We got to create value. We got to find something, or the other way I said it was make them curious. Okay. So they've got to create value or we got to do something that makes them curious to why they should meet with us. And once we've done that, then the next piece was close. So that's where we had left off, was on the close. And in terms of closing, again, as a reminder, there are only 5 ways in the English language that you can close. And that is what time, which time, how soon, when, and where. Those are the only 5 ways. If you say anything outside of what time, which time, how soon, when, or where, or some version of that. Remember I said, I usually will say to people, what works better, afternoons or evenings? Well, that's saying the same thing as which time is better. What we can't do is say things like, is there a time? Would you like to get together? Or the one that is the worst that I hear people do is this. And so this is new. We didn't talk about this on Tuesday. The other one that I hear people say is, why don't we? Why don't we get together? Now, here's the problem with why don't we get together is, watch this. So for you guys that are on Zoom, I'm going to need you to participate and unmute so that Joaquin doesn't feel like I'm just already staring at him the whole time. I'm trying not to. I'm like, I'll look off like I'm pretending I'm looking at some other student. But okay, so here's the question for you. So I'll start with Joaquin, but then I'm going to ask you guys online as well. So I'm going to ask the question. We'll let Joaquin answer first, but then you guys on Zoom unmute and you answer the question as well. So Joaquin, why don't you give me some money?
Right off the bat,
negating it with the word don't.
Okay,
You
so,
know?
but answer my question.
Um,
Why don't you give me some money?
Oh, I don't have any money on me right now.
Okay, so for you guys on Zoom, why don't you give me some money?
I wouldn't like to give you my money.
Okay. What about the rest of you?
Why do you
Why-
want my money?
Sorry, both, do it again.
Oh, I said, why do you want my money?
Because I like it.
I was gonna ask the same thing. Why would you take my money?
Well, so, but you still not answer my question. Why don't you give me some money?
Oh, because I mean.
Well, no, you did, Joaquin, but for
Because I don't
someone-
want to.
Okay,
I don't have a reason to give you my money.
okay. Now, so now notice what happened. How much money did I just get?
0.
Yeah, none. And the reason I got no money is because notice the question I asked. When the way that your brain works like a computer, meaning it responds according to the information that is given. So let me show you. So again, I need you guys on Zoom to participate again. So I'm going to ask a question again, and everybody needs to answer. Okay. So we'll start with Joaquin since you're here.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, would you ask a giraffe or a turtle?
Probably a giraffe.
A giraffe. Okay, so for you guys on Zoom, who are you going to ask? If you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, would you ask a giraffe or a turtle?
I would ask a giraffe.
Giraffe, okay?
Yep, a giraffe.
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 All right, so everybody said giraffe. Now, remember what I just said to you guys. Your brain works like a computer. It responds according to the information given. Now, so let me tie that back to when you ask somebody, why don't we get together? Their brain is going to respond according to the information given. Now, here's the follow-up question to if you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road. What is going to happen for real if you ask a giraffe or a turtle what is going on a mile down the road?
You're not gonna find out.
So why are you not going to find out?
You can't really communicate.
Okay, so here's the question for you guys. Why, when I asked if you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, would you ask a giraffe or a turtle? Why did none of you say, I would not ask a giraffe or a turtle if I wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road?
Because you gave us the option. Then we just thought about the option that you gave us.
Okay. So ultimately, remember what I said. Your brain responds according to the information given. See, even though none of you would actually ever go and ask a giraffe or a turtle what was going on a mile down the road, the fact that I asked the question and gave you two options, your brain responds according to the information given. So what do you think is going to happen if you say to somebody, why don't we get together next Friday at whatever time?
You're gonna think of a reason why you wouldn't get together.
That's right. What's going to be the natural reaction for people is to respond according to you. See, no different. I asked you guys, why don't you give me money? And nobody gave me money. Notice instead and actually you guys for the most part did pretty good. Generally, the answer I get is not the truth. Usually people will say, well, I don't have any, or something along those lines. A couple of you guys said, well, I don't want to give you money. So, which is great. You told me the truth. But a lot of times you say to somebody, why don't we get together? And they're going to answer your question. Well, because I'm busy or whatever. So don't ever do it that way. We always want to ask for an appointment by saying what time, which time, how soon, when, or where would you like to meet? Something along those lines. So what time, which time, how soon, when, and where. Those are the only 5 ways in the English language. If you're asking why don't we get together, you're going to probably get a response that is the reason you're not going to get together, which might not actually even be the truth. It may be just they're answering your question. All right. We good on that?
Yes.
Okay, next then. So the next piece of this that we're going to talk about. So now, remember, what we're working towards here is talking about setting more appointments and getting more transactions. So the next thing I'm going to show you is when you are prospecting. So when you are working and you are on the phone or you're out talking to people, whether it's, in person, knocking on doors, whatever it is. So I'm just gonna say prospecting. So when I say prospecting, it could be phone, person, whatever, however you're doing it. We want to approach it. Now, part of the problem, the way that most agents approach this is they are one track minded. I want you from today forward to be prospecting on parallel tracks. So what that means is this: you're prospecting, looking for the now business, but at the same time that you're doing that, you want to be prospecting for future business. Okay. So when you are prospecting, you should be prospecting on two parallel tracks. What I mean by that is we want to be looking for the deal that's going to happen tomorrow or next week, whatever, now, however you want to define now, the next 30 days, whatever you want to define that as. I want to find that transaction. But let me ask you this question. Do you plan on, and you don't have to answer this, but do you plan on being in real estate a year from now?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'm assuming you guys on Zoom, the answer to that's yes. I've had very few times that somebody has said no, in which case I'm usually like, all right, well, so if you plan on being in real estate a year from now, and you met somebody today that was going to buy or sell, but not for a year, would you still, well, let me ask it differently. Are you still going to need money a year from now?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's true, you're still going to need money a year from now. Wouldn't it make sense when you meet somebody who is not going to do something tomorrow or now, the next month, wouldn't it make sense to say, I want to have a process, a way to stay in touch with those people so that a year from now, when they're ready to buy or sell, I'm still going to need money at that time. Why not have a process set up to where I can capture that person? So when we are prospecting, we want to do this on two parallel tracks. I'm looking for the people who are going to do deals right away. But at the same time, I want to capture the people who aren't ready just yet. Because again, for me, even actually 2 years from now, if I met somebody that said, hey, 2 years from now, we're going to be doing a transaction, I want to capture that person and work with them in such a way that when they do a deal in 2 years from now, which actually, let me even pause for a minute and say this, that most of the time frame people will tell you they're going to do something is usually ends up being about half of that. So if somebody says, hey, we're going to do something in the next 2 years, they're probably going to do it in the next year. If they say in the next year, it'll probably be 6 months. Whatever the time frame is, it is typically going to be cut in half. So just automatically assume that's the case. Okay. All right. So I want to prospect on two parallel tracks. I'm looking for the now business, but at the same time, I'm looking for the future. Now, let me go into why that is. There's a reason for that. So the next thing we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about the buyer / seller cycle. I don't know how well you guys can see this online, so hopefully you hear me as I'm saying it, but we're going to talk about the buyer seller cycle. What I mean by that is this is the process that people go through before they buy a house. Now, next week, I'm supposed to on Tuesday and Thursday teach the needs analysis classes, but I don't know if you guys were online on Zoom hearing me talk about it, but I'm debating on if we will actually do it. What I need to get is a commitment that, and no offense, Joaquin, but I need a commitment that I'm going to get more than one person here in the classroom.
If you get that, I will be here.
You'll be here. Okay.
Yeah, if you don't get the commitment though, well, a lot of times I don't even know if I'm inspecting a home the next day
Gotcha.
until nighttime. Sometimes
Gotcha.
not even until that morning,
Gotcha.
because when people, I feel like, are very finicky when they get plugged in for their
Sure.
due diligence and whatnot.
Sure.
But this week I was able to get in cahoots with Mark and say, hey, I'm gonna go to this training Tuesday,
and
Wednesday, and Thursday.
Cool.
Because I gotta get it and start
Yeah.
doing this, you know?
Cool.
And he's very agreeable.
Cool.
I've never had a time where he didn't work with me.
Good.
You know, so.
Okay. So anyway, in those classes, we're going to be talking about needs analysis. How do you find out? So think of it this way. This class is about how do you get an appointment? Those classes are, now that I got an appointment, what do I do with it? is where we're at with it. And so we're going to talk about that. Now, when I learned that process for the classes that we're going to do, I went to California to be trained on it. And not long after I did that, I ended up actually buying a home. So let me actually give you the whole story. Okay. So I mentioned to you guys yesterday, which I don't think I finished the story about this. So Tuesday, I talked about the fact of, remember I showed you the activities phase, the contacts phase, the appointments phase. And I mentioned to you that I had gone, and after a week that I realized that's what I needed to do, was set. My objective every day was to set one appointment, not to make a certain number of contacts. Well, I mentioned, I believe, that I did that, and a year later I had doubled my income. The next year after that, I doubled my income again. The next year after that, I didn't quite double it, but I got really close. And I did all of that only from setting one new appointment every day. That's all that changed. Now, here's the next piece of that. So as a result of that, I'm in the neighborhood that I lived in at the time. And I had found, I don't know, months before that, maybe a year or two even, I had found a guy that I went to high school with had bought a home in the same general neighborhood. And just one day, I don't even remember where we were at, but I just saw him one day and I was like, hey, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I just live over on this street. And I was like, no, I just live right there too. And so he and I got talking, and we were friends in high school, not like real close friends, but we were acquaintances in high school. Well, so after this happened and my real estate career took off and I was selling a ton of real estate, making good money from it, I one day was talking to him and he said to me, hey, so Russ, when are you going to move? And it caught me so off guard because I had never even entered my mind to move. And so I said, I don't have any plans to move. Why do you say that? And he said, well, it just seems like real estate's going well for you. And I was like, yeah, it's going really good. And he said, well, I just assumed that if it's going so well that you would sell your house and move somewhere else. And I said, no, I have zero plans to move. Now, here's why that I said that is a lot of what I had done, and I will teach you guys, I'm going to teach you guys the process for working a sphere of influence. We've got, I don't remember what day that class is, but I'm going to teach you a class on how to work your sphere of influence. And I was working my sphere of influence that way, and it was paying off big. So a lot of the listings I was getting were from the neighborhood that I lived in, because all of the homes were built and we had ours built, and all the people had moved in about the same time. They were finishing college, they were getting better jobs. And so people were now starting to sell their houses. Well, I had built relationships with those people to where when they put their home on the market, they were calling me to come and help them. So in my mind, I'm never moving out of that neighborhood because I was like, why would I? My business is coming out of the neighborhood, so I would never move. Okay. Now, so when he asked me that day, when are you going to move? I was like, I have no plans. And in my mind, there was not even a thought of ever moving. Okay. Now, let me introduce you to, so this buyer or seller cycle is a 3-phase piece. Okay. Now, here's what I will tell you though, is looking back on it, see, and I didn't understand this at the time. So, but let me actually tell you the end of the story. I actually moved a year later. So he asked me when I was going to move. I said, I'm never moving. Yet within a year, I moved. Okay. Now, and the process of that is where I learned all of this. So during that time frame is how I learned all of this stuff that I'm going to share with you guys right now. And here's what I found is that everybody goes through this process before they buy or sell. And so it's now what I refer to as this buyer or seller cycle. Now, keep in mind what we're talking about here still is the reason when we're prospecting, we got to be on 2 parallel tracks, that we're looking for the now business, but I also want to capture the future business. And so to me, I look at it and say, I think that day that my buddy said to me, when are you planning to move? He planted a seed right there. Okay. Now, here's what happens then, is the first phase that people go through in this buyer or seller cycle, the first step in that process is a term that I call percolation. Okay, so, and I'm, as I ask questions, Joaquin, you don't have to answer every one, even though you're the only one in the room. Like, if you don't want to answer, we'll just, if he's, and you guys on Zoom, feel free to unmute and answer. But if he doesn't answer, I'm expecting one of you to.
I'll assume this, since I'm sitting here, I will have the first answer for every question.
Okay, and you don't
I'll
have
just
to.
roll with that.
Okay, but you don't have to, because I would love for them to participate as well. So, okay, so here's the question for you. When you hear the word percolate, what do you think of?
Stimulate,
Okay,
or like priming before you paint. It's like it's getting ready, it's like, I think of coffee really.
okay, good. That's usually the answer that I hear from people is typically they think about coffee. And when coffee is percolating, what is it doing?
It's brewing.
Yeah, perfect. Good. So that's why I call this term percolation. So percolation is just when they're percolating, it's brewing. But here's the thing. Typically during the percolation phase, it's happening under the surface. So that's the other, when I think about water that's percolating, I tend to think of it as it's happening under the surface. Okay. So meaning a lot of times when people are in this percolation phase, they are just thinking about it, but they're thinking about it more at an unconscious level. Now, let me show you what I learned from this and what I mean by that. So let me draw up here for you. So this right here is 5600 West, this street, 5600 West. This is 6200 South. Okay. So the home that I lived in was right on the corner of 5600 West and 6200 South. And my real estate office though was, if this is Redwood Road here. So that's Redwood Road. Up here is 7800 South. The office that I worked in was right just on the other side of 7800 South and Redwood Road. So there's like well, I don't know what it's called anymore. It used to be Gold's Gym. What are the Gold's Gyms called today?
They're all Planet Fitness or something.
No, it's not. Whatever it is, you know what I mean. Anyway, so my office was there. My house was here, just off this. So now remember, what we're going through is how this percolation process works. My friend says to me, when are you going to move? I say, never, I'm never going to move. Within a week or two, and I wish actually, here's the interesting thing is it wasn't until after this whole process that I discovered all of this and how it works. But I wish that I would have actually been taking notes along the way so that I could actually today tell you it was this amount of time. But it was within a couple of weeks. What happened is, so here's Bangor Highway right here, okay? I would leave my house, I would drive down 6200 South, and then I would either turn onto Bangor and go to 78th, or I would go all the way to Redwood and go down to 78th. Well, within a couple of weeks of my buddy asking me when I was gonna move, and I said never, I'm driving and I get stuck in traffic right here at Bangor and 6200 South. There was always kind of backed up in traffic where you would miss a light or two or whatever. And I remember I'm sitting there in the traffic on that road. And I remember I said to myself, if I ever move, it will be east of Bangor Highway. So now I didn't know this is what was going on at the time. Today, I can tell you what was happening is I had started this percolation process. In that moment, percolation was taking place. Sorry, my wife's texting me some issue that's going on at the schools or something. I don't know.
Oh, God.
I don't
I
know.
hope it has nothing to do with the firearm. Please.
No, I don't think it's that bad. I just, some, I guess I think what it is on social media, junior highs and high schools is like, there's challenges that like go in and destroy a sink in the bathroom and
Oh,
then
yeah.
video it, like, so anyway, my wife
Wow,
sent me
that's-
something about that, but.
That's a different thing.
Okay, sorry. This is why I should not look at my watch when it alerts me, but, okay. So here's the thing. So during percolation is they're just thinking about it. Now, let me tie this together for you. Remember on Tuesday when I was doing the role play with Joaquin? So it's a good thing you were here again today. Remember when on Tuesday I was doing it and I had asked him a bunch of questions. How long have you lived at this address? Where did you move from? Where do you work? Who do you work for? Like all those kinds of things. And then I remember I said, after you've asked a few of those questions, you want to ask, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? The reason why we want to ask, if you were to move, where would you go next? Is because what I'm hoping to have take place, if they're not already in percolation, I'm wanting to try to plant a seed. Now think of it this way. I'm hesitant to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because what I don't want you to do is to think that your job is to run around and plant seeds. No. Remember, your focus has got to be what?
Set an appointment a day.
Good. Setting one appointment every day. So if that's true, your job is not to go out and plant seeds. But remember, we want to prospect on two parallel tracks. So in the process of me out prospecting, looking for an appointment, if I can't get an appointment, I do want to plant a seed to see if it will take root and go anywhere. Okay. So remember, I said, if you were to move, where would you go next? In the event that they say something or they don't say something, it doesn't really matter. Part of what I'm doing by saying that, if you were to move, where would you go next? Is I'm going to be planting a seed that may or may not take root. So if you just think about in terms of planting seeds and things, not every time when you plant seeds is it going to take root and take off. So, but I'm still going to go try to plant seeds while I'm trying to do it. So let me say this another way. I said about now and future in terms of your prospecting. Think of it this way too. In terms of food, when we talk about now business, that would be somebody who's a hunter. Meaning a hunter is going out for the kill, right? When you go hunting, you're going out for the kill. Versus on the as far as food goes again, the longer term is being a farmer. Okay, so think of it this way. Here's what I'm saying to you guys. When you're prospecting, you want to think of it as my primary objective is I'm going out hunting. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you understand better if I say a hunter's going out to get food today. Versus a farmer is going to go out and do the work that the farmer is doing is getting ready to harvest down the road. So part of what I want you to do when I'm saying this is your initial objective when you go out is to set an appointment to find some now business. But if I can't get it, why not plant a few seeds along the way so that the next time I come back that way, they may have taken root and I can harvest the seeds from that. Okay. All right. So here's what happens. So I'm driving down 6200 South. I get to Bangerter Highway and I just say, if I ever were to move, it would be east of Bangerter Highway. And that was it. That was the extent of the thought about it. But I didn't know it at the time, but I do now. Percolation was happening. Okay. Meaning, here's what I mean by that. If I wouldn't have been an agent at the time and you had come and knocked on my door as a real estate agent and said, hey, Russ, my name is Joaquin, I'm with Century 21. We just listed your neighbor's house. Who do you know that wants to move into the area? I would have said nobody. And then you would have said, well, what about you? When do you plan on moving? Never. I'm never moving. I'm going to be here forever. Because at that point, I had one child. I think my wife may have been pregnant. I don't know. But I had one kid. So I'm like, the house I have is plenty big for one kid. So I was like, I'm not going anywhere. Now, so if you had knocked on my door, I still would have told you I'm never moving. Now, keep in mind, within a year, I moved though. Within a year of that taking place, I moved, okay? Now, so percolation was going on. Now, here's what happens. Not long after that, and when I say not long after that, it may have been weeks, it might have been months, I don't know, 2 months. But not too long after that, I one day decide not to turn on to Bangor Highway to go to the office and instead go down here towards Redwood Road. Well, along the way, as I pass 3200 west and here's 2700 west, and I'm driving along here, I notice some new construction going on in a house over there, or houses being built. And I go, oh, that's kind of cool. They're building some houses there. That was kind of the extent of it. So after I noticed that, again, weeks go by or whatever, and I decide one day as I'm driving along here to turn here and go down 3200 west, and I cut through that neighborhood just to kind of see what's going on. Because I see some houses, that first time I noticed houses being framed there. So I drive down there and I'm like, wow, these are some pretty nice houses. Well, at the same time, as I drive through there, I notice there's a big park. They're putting in a swimming pool. It's gonna have basketball courts, tennis courts, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. Now, again, this is all percolation, even though, here's the thing. Here's what I need for you guys to understand. What's going on with that, though, is I'm justifying why I'm doing it. So keep in mind, when people are in this percolation phase, they will justify why they're doing it to themselves. So meaning they're actually lying to themselves about what's going on. Meaning, if again, even after me driving through and doing that, if you had stopped and talked to me and asked me if I wanted to buy or sell real estate, I would have said, I'm not. I have no plans of going anywhere. So if you would have then, if you were a friend of mine and said, well, then why were you saying right here, well, if you ever moved, it would be east of Bangor Highway. And I would have said, well, because I was thinking about the conversation that I had with Darren when he asked me when I was moving. And I was like, well, I'm never moving. But if I did, this is what it would be. Well, then if you said, well, why are you doing that and driving through there? Here's what I would have said. Because I'm an agent, I would have said, well, because I'm an agent and I need to know what's going on in the market. Even though I don't drive into every single neighborhood I ever drive by, the new construction. So because I'm an agent, need to know. But that's how we justify it. That's how the people will justify it in their head. Okay. So all that's percolation. Now, here's the next thing that happened. Not long after that, I'm with my wife and we're driving down here. I don't know, going to dinner, who knows where we were going. We're driving down along here. And as we get to this area, I point out to her, I'm like, hey, have you noticed these homes being built down here? And she says, no, I didn't notice. And I was like, oh, well, I'll have to drive you through there sometime. It's kind of cool. And so we went wherever we were going. And on our way home, I turned on 27th West and drove through the neighborhood. And I was pointing out to her, yeah, look at this. They're getting these houses framed up. And then look at this park and this pool and the da-da-da-da-da. And what happened then, again, this is all still percolation. So to me, this is the point where I think I then started my wife on this percolation process, is when I drove her through and pointed that out. Well, so what happens then is as time goes by, every time I'm driving and going to work, I would a few times a week just kind of drive by to see what was going on in that neighborhood and how many houses they had built. And finally, they have a few of them done, one of them being a model home. So I tell my wife the next time we're driving, hey, they've got a model home done now. And I say, should we go stop in and look at it? And I don't remember, like I say, I wish I would have taken notes on this. I'm having to just recall from my memory. Somewhere along the way, she was like, I mean, I guess if you want. And to some extent, I again, probably justified it as, well, look, I just want to be able to know about it so I could tell other people about it since I'm an agent. So we drive, we stop in there, we go walking into the model home. When we walk into the model home, what do you think? So again, the model home agent, welcome, thanks for coming in. What would you guess that we said to the model home agent when we walked in?
We're just browsing.
Yeah. And actually, because I'm an agent, what I said is, oh, I'm a real estate agent. Now, here's the question for you. Why do people say I'm just browsing? Or why would have I said, well, I'm just a real estate, I'm an agent and I just want to be familiar with the inventory.
They don't know. They're lying to themselves, basically.
Yeah, okay, good. But why? You're right. Why?
I would say overall, on the whole, it's fear
Of what?
of taking that step
Good.
to the unknown.
Okay, good. So here's another way of saying, everybody likes to buy, nobody likes to be sold. So the reason people walk in and say to you, I'm just browsing, we're just looking, or in my case on this one that I walked in and said, I'm a real estate agent and I just want to be familiar with the inventory. Part of what you guys need to remember is the reason that that happens is because everybody likes to buy, nobody likes to be sold. Now, with that being said, let me come back to this. During the percolation phase, remember I said this is all going on under the surface. They're not aware that it's even happening. They are not aware they have started the process of buying or selling a house. And because they're not aware of it, when they walk in, they truly believe, or at least like you said, they're justifying to themselves. And actually the truth is they really don't know. It's just they don't know. It's not, even though I said it as they're lying or whatever, they're really not. It's just they don't know that's the first step in the process of buying or selling a house. Therefore, they say, we were just curious. We were just wondering. Same thing with if you get a phone call off of when you have a home listed for sale and somebody calls you and says, oh, we were just driving by. We were just curious what the homes in this neighborhood were. Yeah, that's part of the process before you buy or sell a house.
That's what we're trying to create is that curiosity.
That's right. And they just don't know it, that's what it is. Okay. All right. Now, so here's the next step in this. The next piece of this is after percolation. The next thing that happens, or the next phase, is information gathering. Okay. Information gathering. During the information gathering phase, guess what they're doing?
They're going into the next phase of buying or selling a house.
Yeah, and they're gathering information. Like that's the reason I call it that highly technical term. Just exactly what they're doing. After percolation is where they start into information gathering. Now, here's the thing. It's not like there is even though I've drawn it up here, there's this line, there's not a line. Meaning it just kind of slowly happens. And said another way, early on in the information gathering phase, they aren't even aware that they are gathering information. They think they're still just curious. They think that it was just, they were, so here's what I mean by that. Looking back now, I can see the day that I walked into the model home there, the day I walked into the model home, I had transitioned into information gathering. But again, if you had asked me that day, when are you going to be moving? I would have said, I'm never moving. I still would have said that. And if you would have said to me, why did you go look at the model home? I would have said, again, I just was curious. I just thought it'd be cool to go take a look. But what I know now is I had moved into information gathering. Information gathering is where they're starting to now gather information. They start to ask questions. So here's what I guess I'm saying again. If you have a home for sale or you have a website or whatever, and somebody calls you off of it, goes onto the website, signs up, and they're now asking questions, they're more than likely in the information gathering phase. If they're early on in that information gathering phase, they are still going to say, we're just curious, we're just looking. Now, here's the other side of that. You and I have all been trained culturally that when you walk into a store or you encounter a salesperson, the first thing you say is no. Meaning, when you walk into a department store and they say, can I help you find something? What do you say?
No, thanks.
Yeah, nope, just looking. Now, the reason we do that is because, again, we want to buy, we just don't want to be sold. We don't want somebody to try to sell us. So we approach it that way. Now, here's the other side of it. Unfortunately, most salespeople just go, okay. Meaning you walk into a department store and somebody says, welcome, can I help you find something? Nope, just looking. Now, if they were a good salesperson, what they would say is, oh, that's great. What are you looking for? And then when the person says shoes, oh, shoes are over here. Let me just show you. And then they would walk you over to help you find the shoes. See, but instead, because we have all learned when you walk into a department store, if you say, nope, just looking, that the salesperson goes, oh, okay, and walks away. We go, oh, that's what works. So now when it comes time on a house and somebody calls you and you try to get an appointment, oh no, we're just looking. We're just curious. So here's what I'm saying. For you guys, you need to say, okay, and be good with it. Like, don't try to tell them, no, that's not true. You're going to really buy. But in your mind, you need to know that in the fact that they're calling and asking questions. So again, I just always keep coming back to planting seeds. Again, if you just think about it in terms of gardening or something, that if you plant seeds, not every one of them is going to take root. Meaning you may have times where one does take root and it starts to grow, but then it withers and dies, a flower or something, like for whatever reason that happens. Well, as a result of that same thing happens here, meaning you sometimes might plant a seed that somebody then starts to go, and then whatever reason they back off, they lose their interest, whatever. But we don't know who that is. So all we can know is this process, and that understand that people that we are dealing with are typically somewhere in this process. Okay. Now, the final phase of this is, well, so actually, let me finish the story about what happened on the house. So we walked through, and as we walked through the house, my wife and I then all of a sudden went very quickly further along in this information gathering than where we thought we were. Now, what ended up happening is as we walked through, we were like, I really like this house. And my wife's like, I really like this house too. So we go down and I say to the model home agent, hey, so what cul-de-sacs do you have available in this neighborhood? See, again, this is all information gathering. So I say, what cul-de-sacs do you have available in the neighborhood? And she said, oh, we've got this one over here. And it was right on the other side of the park. And like, it was perfect for what I wanted. And what I don't remember today, I'll have to ask my wife, see if she remembers. I don't think we put money down on the lot that day, but within a short period of time, we had gone in and put money down on a lot in there. Now, here's the other thing that happened. So like I just said, we very quickly, all of a sudden, we're going through this. Well, sometimes what happens with clients is it scares them because all of a sudden they're doing something that they, even though unconsciously they've been preparing for it, all of a sudden it hits the conscious level that I'm doing it and it scares them. And so that's what happened with us is we all of a sudden were like, what are we doing? Like I said, at that point we were like, why are we doing this? Like, it doesn't make sense that we're going in and doing this because we don't need a new house. We don't need that big. Like the house was actually twice the size of the one that we had been in. It actually might even been bigger than twice, actually, as I think about it. But we were like, what are we doing? And so I remember we called up the model home agent and said, hey, tear up our check. Like we really aren't, we don't know what we were doing. Then what happened is a month or two went by, and guess what I kept doing the whole time? Still driving by there, still driving by there. Finally, one day, my wife and I are talking, and I'm like, I actually really do want to move over there. She was like, yeah, me too. So we went back to the model home, and I said to the agent, okay, can we still get that lot? She said, no, it's not available anymore. And I said, well, do you have any other cul-de-sac lots? She said, yep, in that same cul-de-sac we do, but it's on the corner. And I was like, I don't want a quarter lot. But I ended up buying on a corner lot. So
And you already had a corner lot, so you're good with them.
I know, and I hate them.
You know
No,
what
I
you're
hate
doing.
them. I hate them. I swear I would
I
never
had
do
a
it.
corner lot too.
I know, I hate it, especially yesterday doing all the snow.
Oh, yeah.
But okay, so here's the thing. So the last phase in this process, and during the needs analysis class, I'll come back to this story and I'll tell you some other pieces of it. But let's go back to this buyer seller cycle. So the last of the three phases that people go through. So first is they're thinking about it, percolation, it's going on under the surface. Then they start to information gather. And then the final phase is what we would call active. In the active phase now, so let me connect some dots for you. Most people, when they're prospecting and they're looking for this now business, what they're looking for and what we are looking for is these people that are in the active phase. But do you see any problems with that now that you understand all of this? Do you see any problems with capturing the people in the active phase?
maybe they feel like since they're already, they know what they want, you know, and what are you gonna bring to the table?
Okay, good.
Maybe they might think that.
So guess what else is going on during information gathering? They're not just gathering information about houses. What else would they be gathering?
Looking for agents. Or
That's
someone
right.
To help them, guide them through that process.
Even though, again, this isn't a conscious thing that's going on, but what's happening is they're figuring out along the way, they're gathering information as to like, who would we want to work with? Now, but not at a conscious level, just unconsciously, they're figuring out people that they talked to, that they liked them or they didn't like them. So that's the other piece that goes on. So now, when we're prospecting, you and I, and we come across somebody who's in the active phase, what we need to keep in mind and what we always need to remember is there's a chance that the people along the way have been gathering information about who they're going to work with. Now, that doesn't mean they've already decided. I'm not saying that 100%. Some have, but just know, here's what I'm really saying. When people remember I already told you that it scares them when they all of a sudden realize that they're, and it may not always like be a conscious level scare, but early on as they are in this, when they realize during information gathering that they're about to be buying or selling, there is a moment that they get a little scared. Now it might, for every person, it may be bigger or littler, but whatever. But either way, what's going on though is all of a sudden they're a little bit nervous about it. Well, as a result of that, when you and I come along now in our prospecting, we find this person who's in the active phase, they are going to be harder to set an appointment with. So here's what I mean by that. Of these three, if I were to list these 1, 2, and 3, and I had you guys vote, what would happen is most of you would vote to say, if I had you vote on which is the hardest to set an appointment with, now I already said it, so I'm not going to do it. But typically, if I have people vote, they will pick here or here. Hardly anybody says that this is the hardest person to get an appointment with. But in actuality, this group of people are the hardest ones to get an appointment with. And the reason is because they've already been through this information gathering and they know they're vulnerable. They know they're ready to buy, but they don't. Again, they're going to go back to people like to buy. They don't want to be sold. They know they're going to buy. They just don't want to be sold. So these people tend to have their guard up. So said another way, you are going in your prospecting. When we are prospecting, we always want to capture these people. Like meaning if you had the option, Marky, to get an appointment tomorrow with somebody that's going to buy in the next 30 days or the next year, which one are you going to choose?
The next 30 days.
Yeah, obviously, right? Yeah. Well, so because of that, this group is going to be the hardest ones to get an appointment with, meaning you're going to have to probably ask for the appointment. So now remember, we talked about closing. There's only 5 ways: what time, which time, how soon, when, or where. You're going to have to close on these people between 3 and 5 times. You're going to have to ask what time, which time, how soon, when, or where of these people between 3 and 5 times before they're going to say yes, to capture these people.
I have someone right now who's in that active phase. It's like just eating me up because like I want to go get them, and they're a prior colleague of mine.
Okay.
They're a friend of mine from the military, and I haven't set that appointment with him just because I'm so new to this and I'm still like learning the best ways to do this, and I don't want to make a bad mistake before, even though that's kind of learning. That's learning.
Okay, so
Remember,
remember,
you have a loss or the thrill of victory that need defeat. Use that to push you forward.
Okay, so remember though what we talked about on Tuesday: activities, contacts, and appointments phase.
Yeah.
What you just said to me is I'm staying in the activities phase because I'm afraid to go do something wrong. Here's the thing. Know that we are here to help and support you. And all you really need to know is the next step. Meaning, don't worry about, and I would say the same for you guys on Zoom. Don't worry about the fact of, I don't know I can't see the whole way, but just worry about, can you see the first step? Can you see the next step? That ultimately, here's what I would say to you guys. We are in the relevant steps business. Your job is just to get to people to take steps. So the very first step that we're trying to get people to take is to set an appointment. Then after they've set the appointment, the next step would be that they show up to the appointment. And then after they show up to the appointment, that they sign a buyer broker agreement. If it's a buyer, if it's a seller, they sign a listing agreement. And then, so we'll stick with just buyers for a minute. So they sign a buyer broker agreement. Then what would be the next step?
Start going.
Go look at houses. They take that step. What's the next step?
Sign.
Write an offer.
Yeah, right now.
And then what's the next step? Get the offer accepted. What's the next step? Do an inspection.
Yeah.
After the inspection, what are they gonna do? They're gonna ask for some repairs. After the repairs, what are they gonna do? Get an appraisal. After the appraisal, then they're gonna go sign the documents. Then they close. Then they go move in.
Let the flow take care of you.
Yeah,
Go
so
with the flow.
ultimately what I'm saying, and sorry, I left the screen for you guys, but ultimately what I'm saying is just start with your first step is get an appointment. Then after that, I'm gonna meet with them. Then I'm gonna ask them to sign a contract. Then we're gonna go look at properties. Then we're gonna ask them to sign a contract. Then we're gonna go do our inspection. Then I'm gonna ask them to, or we'll do the appraisal. Then they're gonna close. Like all your job is just to move. Sorry. I think I'm gonna sneeze again. Hang on. Okay, no, I'm good.
Twos or threes.
That's always two for me, except for now. So just remember, your job is just to get people to take the next step. That's it, okay? All right. So this is the hardest group to get an appointment with. You're gonna have to typically ask 3 to 5 times before they're gonna say yes, if they're in the active phase. These ones are usually easier to get an appointment with because they're like, if you wanna waste your time meeting with me, go right ahead. Does that make sense? But now hopefully you can see it's not necessarily a waste of time. You just need to work with these people differently than you are the others. All right. What questions on that? We haven't involved you Zoomers yet much lately. So what questions do you guys have? Or did I do such a good job explaining it? You have no questions?
I don't really have any questions. I personally really understood the process of just like the percolator being like the subconscious mind working, like I kind of understood it as once they move to the second phase, it's kind of like they act physically. And then the active phase is just like setting it into motion. So that's kind of how I understood it. I don't know if.
Good, that's great. What about the rest of you?
I think it was important, like you were saying, to keep this in the back of your mind when like you're making contacts and stuff like that, and you're kind of gauging where the people are at. Like, are they like in the percolation phase? Like, are they active? Information gathering? I think that's super important.
Cool, good. All right, Linz.
You explained the process really well. I understood it.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, will you start over?
Yeah, I missed the whole thing. Start over.
Like I had to go take a break and went outside for, no. Okay, good, thank you. Any questions? Okay.
No.
Okay, all right, well, I'm gonna stop explaining so good then, so you guys have more questions. I'm teasing. All right, good. Okay, so the next step, the next thing that we're gonna do then here, if you guys are good with this, and thanks Solomon for what you said, because really, that's the truth, is part of what I wanted you guys to learn from this is in your prospecting and as you're working with people, whether it's trying to set an appointment or doing lead follow-up with somebody, what you need to understand is that they're probably somewhere in this process and your job is just to be there so that when they become active and they're ready, you're it. You're the one that they're going to be. So let me say that differently. Keep in mind when you're prospecting, you're out for the kill. And then I hate to use that, but it's the best example of saying it is you're the hunter. So I'll say it that way instead of kill. You are the hunter. You're looking for food to eat now. But as soon as I figure out that they're not ready yet, I turn from a hunter into a farmer. And let me show you what I mean. In fact, if you should write this down somewhere, post it. It needs to be in front of you everywhere that you're prospecting. Because you need to say this over and over. So the moment that I notice I'm not going to be able to set an appointment with the person, when I can tell that they're not, or at least I think they're not ready, I am immediately going to use these words. And so this is what I want you to write down, get it posted wherever you're prospecting. I work with my clients at their pace. So I work with my clients at their pace. I work with my clients at their pace. That's the transition from I'm a hunter to I'm a farmer. I'm telling them. Now, here's the other thing. You're probably going to say that. Well, let me say that differently. You should be saying that those things 100 times during your prospecting. Because anytime you can feel that somebody thinks you're trying to push them, you immediately switch from hunter mode to farmer of, hey, Joaquin, I work with my clients at their pace. So like, I'm not trying to get you to buy or sell a house today. I just want to be there and be a resource to help you along the way. I work with my clients at their pace. What that does is helps people to relax that, oh, okay, good. Because we thought you were trying to get us to just buy a house tomorrow. So let me give you another example of that I'll use. I work with my clients at their pace. A lot of times, and I think you guys have heard me say this, but I'm going to keep saying it. A lot of times when I'm meeting with somebody who wants to sell their house, one of the first things I will say to them is, have you considered just keeping the house? Because and this is true of me, although I don't always follow what I'm about to say, but it's true that I believe it. Real estate was meant to be bought. It was never meant to be sold. And what I mean by that, and generally what I will say is, if you have owned ever any houses beyond what you currently own, do you wish you still owned them? And my answer to that is, so this house that I told you over here, I wish I still owned it. I bought it for $75,000. I sold it for 140 or something like that. I don't know exactly, somewhere around 140. I could sell it today for probably 450,000. I wish I still owned that house. I mean, I would have had another $300,000 of equity in properties if I still owned it. So what I will usually say to people when I meet with somebody to talk about them selling their home is, have you considered keeping it? Now, here's why. That same thing that I was telling you, I work with my clients at their pace. If I say to somebody, have you considered just keeping the house as a rental and not selling it? What that does is has them realize, okay, you're not here just about making a commission. You want to actually help me. That's what I work with my clients at their pace means. All right. Okay. Now, so with that, that's the transition from being a hunter to a farmer. Hey, no worries. I work with my clients at their pace. Like, I just want to be a resource to help you along the way. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. That's how I switch to farmer mode. That's how you put somebody at ease who's in percolation or information gathering is, hey, I work with my clients at their pace. I'm not going to push you to do something you don't want to do. All right, next. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to bring up and show you. Let me get the screen down here for you. So we're going to go through and take a look now at a report that is put out by the National Association of Realtors. Okay, so remember I told you that we were going to talk about, oops, I didn't get the screen turned. Remember I said you were going to talk about all the different ways you could prospect, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So that's kind of the next step of this. So let me get the screen. The Zoom people can see it. You just can't see it.
I can kind of wheel over here.
No, it's coming up.
Okay.
There it is.
Oh, cool.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through and talk about different ways of prospecting. And remember, here's the thing. Really, at the end of the day, if I just said class is over, you know everything you need to know about how to set appointments and how the process works. But we'll get into some specifics now on some of the things. So this first thing that I'm showing you here is, this is well, actually, let me even explain. Oops, wrong thing. There we go. All right. Every year, NAR does a survey of home buyers and sellers. And so what happens is this. So let me give you the background on it. Is in July of every year, NAR goes to the tax records and finds people who have bought and sold homes over the last year. And then they're going to send to them a survey. So they start sending this out in July. They work from July until the end of September to get responses back to these surveys. Once they get the responses back, then they take the month of October and compile all the data, October and the first part of November. Then in November, they release the survey out to us. So in the past, it's always, if to buy a PDF version of this has been $20. But the last 2 years, it's been free. So what you're looking at is free, available to you if you go to realtor.org. You have to log in using your National Association Realtor number, your NERDS number. And then once you're logged in, you can do a search for the profile of home buyers and sellers. And you can print this out. It is like 150 pages long. I mean, it might be longer than that even, but somewhere around there. Okay, so we're not going to go through all of it, but I'm going to show you a few of these reports because there's a few things that I want you guys to see. So this one here is what you're looking at is the for sale by owners. Now, what this chart is this is showing the number of sales that took place that were for sale by owner or were done by agents. Now, there is a lot of information in real estate. There are a lot of there's a lot of anecdotal information, meaning there's a lot of stories that get told that if you were to ask the person, where did you get that from? They're going to say, I don't know, somebody told me. And if you went, even if they could tell you who it was, if you went to that person and you said, where did you get it? I don't know, somebody told me. And you could keep trying to track it back. What you're going to hear, if you haven't yet, what you're going to hear people say is a high percentage, and usually the number you're going to hear is somewhere between 80 and 98%. Between 80 and 98% of all for sale by owners end up listing their home. If you haven't heard that, you're going to hear that somewhere along the way. Well, where that came from is this chart, but that's not what this chart says. So let me kind of tell you, I was in a training. This was a guy, a national trainer that had come to Utah to do a training. In his training, he made the comment, according to NAR, 88% of all for sale by owners end up listing their home. So after the class, I went up to him because I was teaching classes too. And I said, I would love to find that chart that NAR put out that says 88% of all for sale by owners list, because I've never been able to find it. Do you have it? And he said, yeah, I don't have it with me, but he was from Boston. And he said, it's back. It's at my house in Boston. And I said, great. Here's my business card. Will you send it to me when you get back there? And he said, yes. He never sent it to me. So at this training, he had also said, hey, go on and like my Facebook page. So I had done that. Well, so after a few weeks when I had not gotten this report, I went to him and sent him a private message through Facebook and said, hey, will you send me that report about that shows the 88% of all for sale by owners list? He said, yes, never sent it to me. So a few months go by and he posts on his Facebook page that everybody knows, according to NAR, 88% of all for sale by owners list. So I comment on there again, hey, you were going to send me that report and you haven't sent it to me. Will you send it to me? He deleted my comment. So here's what that told me. He doesn't have it. So what I'm showing you though is where I believe that came from. Because if you look at this, that top line up there, which I guess I should use the mouse to show, this line up here is showing the number of transactions that happened that were, so this is saying 2021, but it's really kind of half of 2020 and half of 2021, really. But what it's showing you is of all the sales that took place across the country, for 2021, 90% of them used a real estate agent. The other 7% sold their home for sale by owner. So this light blue line down here is the number of transactions that closed that were a for sale by owner. So 7% of 7 out of every 100 homes that sells is a for sale by owner. Now, I would be curious to know, does that surprise you? Or no?
I don't know. I don't think it surprises me.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really know enough about this yet, but I feel like it's a process that probably not many people know about. And so they want to utilize an agent.
Okay, good. What about you guys on Zoom? Does it surprise you? That 7 out of every 100 homes that sells is a for sale by owner?
Not really, because, I think, the agents that just have more resources and more connections. I don't know. Is that what you're asking?
But I'm sure. I mean, I don't know necessarily. I guess to me, it's a little surprising. Like, and what I mean by that is not that how high of a percentage is sold by agents. To me, I'm surprised that even 7%, 7 out of every 100 homes that sells. Like, honestly, if I had never seen this chart and had, let's say I've been an agent over 25 years. If I've been an agent over 25 years and I'd never seen this chart, and you asked me out of every 100 homes, how many that sell are a for sale by owner, I would have probably said 1 or 2. So to me, I'm a little bit surprised. Now look back.
Oh, I'm surprised that there's that many.
Yeah.
Oh, I certainly am surprised about that.
So to me
I
though,
mean, I would think, why aren't 100% using agents? Because except for agents who want to buy and sell property.
well, yeah, no, and I agree. I think everybody should use an agent. But to me, I just was surprised because we'll look back here where I was showing you back here for look in like 1997, in 1985, like 1985, 21 out of every 100 homes, almost 1 out of 4 homes that were selling were a for sale by owner. That's crazy to
Is it
me.
Reaganomics? What is that?
I don't
Why-
know.
What is going on there?
Well, I have some suspicions, but I don't know. I was still in high school, so I don't know. Some of you guys on Zoom weren't even born. That's interesting. But so here's the thing though, for me, the reason I'm showing you this chart, we're going to talk about for sale by owners for a minute. But the reason I'm showing you this chart is what I don't want you guys to think is that they can't do it. There are a lot of agents out there who approach for sale by owners from the standpoint of like, you're an idiot that you're trying to sell it on your own because you're never going to be able to do it. When in actuality, like to some extent, I mean, it is still a low percentage, but even how low it is to me, I still feel like that's a pretty high percentage of people, 7 out of 100 that sell it themselves. I truly would have thought it would be 1 or 2% if I didn't know this. So anyway, I just want you guys to see it and know that here's the other thing that's interesting is notice that it's on a downward trend. See, I remember in 2003, I remember being a little nervous of like, are people going to need real estate agents with Zillow and being able to just, everybody had websites and they could find houses. I worried back in 2003 that our people are going to really use this, meaning like travel agents still exist, but they're kind of a thing of the past. And I kind of thought real estate was headed that direction. But if you look at it, the opposite has happened. And I think to some extent is it's gotten enough complicated that people have realized the reason it's gone down is people have realized like it's worth it to use an agent. Okay. All right, next. The next chart that I'm going to show you. Oh, why is it not working? Sorry. All right, let me see if this will work now. All right, that's working. Why is it not? Oh, well, I'll just click. All right, so here's the next piece. This is the main thing I want you to see. Here's the thing. First thing I wanted you guys to see is if you're going to call and work for sale by owners, which is a great way to get listings, I wanted to make sure that you first can approach it from the standpoint of they can do the job. 7 out of every 100 homes that sell are a for sale by owner. So I don't want you to think they can't do it. And I don't want you guys approaching it the way a lot of agents approach for sale by owners, like you're an idiot. you're stupid. And to me, it's just not a good way to approach it. You need to kind of also know it works. But see, that's my concern with people saying 98% of all for sale by owners end up listing their home, because that's not what that chart said. No, now it works. That's not what this chart says. What this says is that just 90% of the time people end up using a real estate agent. It didn't, we don't know how many of those tried for sale by owner first and then we went to an agent. Okay, now, so let me show you this though. So this is the next one. Now, there's a lot of data on here, but I don't want you to worry about too much of it other than, first thing I want to talk about is median selling price. The median selling price, the reason we use median selling price versus an average sales price, median is getting to the middle versus, here's what I mean. So what, we got, I don't know, let's just say we had 10 people in class, okay? If we had 10 people in class and let's say that I made $0 last year, and let's say Joaquin made $100 million last year. Well, let's just say 10. You made $10 million. And then we had the other people in here all made about 150. So somewhere between 100 and 200,000. If we were to average out our income and Joaquin made $10 million last year, what is the average income going to be of the 10 people? Well, somewhere around $1 million. But is that really real that our average, if there was 10 of us in here and 8 of them were between 100 and 200, I was at 0 and you were at 10 million, would it be a true picture to say, hey, look at this class, we average $1 million a year in income? No, because so the reason we use median price on here is because it takes out the outliers. It gets rid of outliers. So now if we had that same 10 group here, and that let's just say that we had half of the other 8, so I'm still at 0, you're at 100 million. The other 8 people, half of them made 100,000, the other half made 200,000 of those 8. So 4 made 100 and 4 made 8 or 200. The median income, well, let's just say one of them was at, or 2 of them were at 150. The median income is going to be then 150. That would be a better picture of the class of, hey, our median income is $150,000 versus if we did average, it looks like we're all rock stars because you made 10 million. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're using median sales price here, okay, rather than average. Now, the 2 areas that I want you to notice is this one and this one. So just seller did not know the buyer and agent assisted, okay? Because if you look at the column that is seller knew the buyer, it makes sense that if I was selling my house to a family member, I'm going to give them a good deal. And it shows that on here. If they knew the buyer, the median selling price of the houses was $227,000. If they didn't know the buyer, it's $273,000. Well, is there any chance, or there's some chance, but is it very likely that if somebody is going to sell their house for sale by owner and they're going to sell it to somebody they know, that an agent's going to get in between that transaction? Probably not. But if they don't know the buyer, could you get involved in the transaction? Yes. Meaning, like, if I just decided to sell my property to my son and I never told anybody else that I was for sale and I sell it, there is no way an agent's going to go prospect me to get that deal. But if I throw a for sale by owner sign out in front of my yard and I decide to, you could potentially get it. So the main thing that I'm wanting, what's up, Aiden?
What you teach it?
Lead generation day 2.
So I think I already did this one. I didn't get an email.
I think you've done all of them. So
Nah, I'm missing like one.
are you? Okay. Yeah, I know
Every
you.
time I get the email a day late. so-
Yeah. If you didn't get the email, you've done it.
So-
And hey, and if you haven't done it, it's almost over.
Thanks for the info.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, guys. So now, if you look at that, the median sales price was $273,800. Now, if you go over to the agent assisted, so again, we're taking all of those 7% of the houses that sold, their median was 273. The other 90%, the median is 318,000. So if you stop and look at that, let me ask this question actually. Why does anybody ever sell their house for sale by owner? Why would somebody sell their house for sale by owner?
Because they want to try to gross as much money possible and they don't want to have to pay somebody.
Right. In their mind, they want to save the commission, which is how much? Approximately
6 to 8%.
6, let's just say 6. So they want to save, they're selling their house for sale by owner to save 6%. Now, the difference between the 273.8 and 318 is 14%. So in order to, for sale by owner, in order for them to save 6%, it costs them 14. So I hope this is making sense to you. Like, to me, what you're seeing there is they should not be trying to sell their house for sale by owner, because yes, they think they're going to save money. So here's what you want to say. So the whole reason me showing you this, remember, when we're working for sale by owner, we got to connect, we got to create value, we got to close. Part of what you're going to do is, part of what I want you guys to see this for is so that as you are talking to a for sale by owner and you want to ask them, why did you decide to sell your home yourself rather than use an agent? And they're going to say, to save the commission. Well, what you want to say and what you need to understand then is, if there was a way that you could help them net more money. So let me say that differently. Ultimately, what you want to use with them is you want to transition that. You want to do a level shift. And what you want to say is, so really what I hear you saying is you want to net the most amount of money possible. And they're going to say, yeah, it's because that's why they're doing this, right? They're doing it for sale by owner because they will say it as, I want to save the commission, but ultimately get it off of, you want to get it off of the commission and onto the net. And the reason is because now that you guys see this, you can understand it's not about the commission. And the people who are selling their house for sale by owner that are doing it to save the commission, on average, it doesn't work. Now, are there some that it works? Probably. I'm sure there are, but there are a ton that don't. And that's why there's such a disparity between those two prices. So part of what you want to do in working for sale by owners is you want to approach it as, why did you decide to sell yourself rather than list with an agent? Well, I wanted to save the commission. Okay, so then you're going to level shift that. So what I hear you saying is you wanted to net the most amount of money. Yes. Well, if I could show you ways that you could net more money and still use an agent, if you could use me as your agent and walk away with more money, would you be willing to talk about it? And then they're probably going to say what? They're either going to say yes, or they're going to say, well, how are you going to do that? How is that possible? Now, remember, part of how we set an appointment with people is we got to create value or make them curious. If I'm on the phone with somebody and I said to them, if there was a way you could use me and net more money, would it make sense for us to talk? They're going to then be curious and say, well, how are you going to do that? That's the very reason we need to get together. Now, what works better, afternoon or evening? See, I can get an appointment. All right. Okay. If you guys have questions, stop me. Okay. Next, this next chart that I'm going to show you. So 2 more charts that I'm going to show you, and then we're going to run through expireds and we'll wrap it up. So this chart is showing the method used to find a real estate agent by sellers. Okay. So as you look at that, what stands out to you of how sellers choose their agent? Most of the time.
They're referred by somebody.
Yeah. Referred by or is a friend, neighbor, or relative. So remember, hopefully I've said it enough. If I haven't, then I need to say it more. You need to keep in mind that you got to work your sphere of influence, because those top 2, referred by or is a friend, neighbor, or relative, and use the agent previously to buy or sell a home, those 2 are what we would constitute as a sphere of influence. And if you add those together, you come up with what? 68%? Yeah, 68%. 68% of the time, the way somebody's going to choose who they're going to list their home with is a friend, neighbor, or relative, or they've used the agent in the past. So you got to work that. Then notice after that, the huge drop off. So here's my point. It doesn't matter after your SOI what you do. Work for sale by owners, work expired listings, go knock on doors, get on the phone call, get a website. It actually doesn't matter that much. Your SOI is where it's at. All right, how about buyers? How do buyers choose their agent? Well, here we get 60% of the time, it was referred buyer as a friend, neighbor, or relative, or they used the agent previously. And then notice the drop off again. Internet is better for a buyer than a seller looking at this. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what you do outside of that. So here's my point. When you're prospecting, you should pick 2 or 3 ways that you're going to do it, and then just stick to it. Pick 2 or 3 ways to prospect, and then just stick to it. And the problem that most people have, most real estate agents, what they do is they end up bouncing all over the place. They end up taking what I showed you there and kind of working some for sale by owners. Then they go do expireds. Then they go do just listed cards. Then they go buy a website. Then they go do a marketing piece. They bounce all over the place. Pick 2 or 3 ways that you're going to prospect and then just stick with it. All right. Let's talk now. Any other questions on, like, ultimately with for sale by owners, the concept is connect, create value, close, but I've given you a few ideas there of how to kind of go approaching them from the standpoint of they can do it. So don't try to treat them like they're an idiot, but help them see that really what they're worried about is netting the most amount of money, not saving the commission. Because here's the thing, if they could pay the commission but get more money, they would be fine with it. Okay. All right. Any questions on FSBO? We're going to go to expireds next. All right. So expired listings. In fact, let me erase all this.
Is there a way you could send us that chart?
Yeah, I can. But
That'd be
if
sweet,
you,
thank you.
will you send me, if you'll send me an email just to remind me?
Yeah, for sure.
It's, well, you probably have my email, right? But Russ
Yeah.
Orchard at Gmail, but with only one S. RUS. Hey, what's up?
How's it going?
So good you wouldn't believe
I
it.
thought you were saying,
Oh,
when I heard Russ Orchard, it's not, so.
it's not. Yep. So, all right, expired. Let's talk about expired listings. So here's the way to approach expired listings is here's what you want to do is you're going to choose an area. Now, the way you want to choose the area is you want to choose it based upon either where you live, close to the office, or just an area you want to get listings in. Okay. So what I want you to do is choose an area that you're going to work in, either close to your house, close to the office, or just pick an area that you want to get listings in. Then what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, here's this area that I've got. Now, sometimes people will say, well, how big should the area be? And here's the answer. As you work this, you'll figure out the size. And the reason I say that is because depending on the area, I can't tell you the size because I don't know which area you're going to choose, and it's going to vary. Meaning some areas you might want a bigger area, others you might want a smaller. So, but I'll tell you, as you start to do what I'm telling you to do, you'll figure out I either need to make the area bigger or smaller. So here's what I'm saying. To start with, just pick an area. And then as you do what I'm going to talk about, you'll figure out it's too big of an area, I need to shrink it, or you'll figure out it's not big enough, I need to make it bigger. Or you'll say it's just right. Okay. All right. Pick an area. Then what I want you to do is go onto the MLS and you're going to do a search for expired listings. So you're going to go on the MLS, change the property status to be expired, go to the map, select the area that you want to be in. And like I said, just pick an area. It doesn't matter. Just decide on what, pick a whole city if you want, or do half of the city. Like just pick one, doesn't matter. Then you're going to say, okay, I want to see all the expired listings in that area for the last year. So you'll have to go to the expiration date on there's a date you can put it from when it expired and go back 1 year ago and see how many properties come up. Now, Once they come up, you're gonna go through and look at each of them and look at the history. So you gotta click on the history for each of those properties to find out on the history to make sure that the last thing showing up is expired. Isn't expired, that the property is, are you guys following me? Okay. Because what I mean by that is if it expired and then they relisted it and it sold, you don't want to try to work it because it's already gone. If it expired and it's currently listed, I don't want to try to work it. So you're going to click on the history to make sure that the last thing that happened on that property was that it shows as expired, not sold or active or under contract, any of that, okay? So you're going to then any of the ones that came back on the market and sold or are currently on the market or are under contract, get rid of them. You're looking for any of the properties in that area that are still showing as expired, okay? Now that I've got those and I'm going to print them off, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in the car and go knock on those doors. So you want to go, the reason I'm telling you to go knock on doors for these is because finding phone numbers for expired listings is very hard. Like for sale by owners, it's easy. You go on to ksl.com, find the ones that are for sale by owners, they've got their phone number posted there. An expired listing is going to be hard to find a phone number. So you can call if you want to try to track down a phone number, but I'm telling you, you're probably only going to find 30% of the phone numbers. So 3 out of 10. So for every 10, you've got 7 that you're not going to have a phone number, go knock on their door. That's what we found. And that's why I'm saying do it in an area and you'll figure out if it's too big or too small of an area, because if you feel like it's taking you forever to drive to all of these, then it's too big of an area, shrink it. If you go out and you like do this search and there's 2 houses, then you probably need a bigger area. So that's what I mean by you'll figure it out, is if you just find, man, I feel like all I'm doing is driving around all day, that's too big of an area. Need it to be small. Okay, so now I'm going to find the properties. So let's just say that I've got, for the case of right now, that there's just 3. You probably want more than that, but But the other thing that I'm going to do is, so I've looked back for a year. I found the properties that expired and have not come back on the market. I'm going to go knock on their doors. But then starting tomorrow, I'm going to have, when you create this search, you want to save it though, not for a year back, for everything from the day before. So that tomorrow, if any properties come up as expireds in that area, I'll get notified tomorrow of the ones that expired today. Then the next day, for those, so that going forward, you're capturing them right as they expire. Does that make sense? Good. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and knock on the door. So I'm going to go out and knock on this person's door. What I have found though is most of the time when you go knock on their door, they're not home. So what you want to do then is this. So we'll talk about if they are home, but we're going to talk about if they're not first. If they're not home, then what you're going to do is you're going to knock on 3 to 5 doors this way. So you're going to go to their neighbors, 3 to 5 houses on one side, cross the street, do 6 to 10 on the other side, and then 3 to 5 on this side. You're going to knock on the doors. Now, here's what that's going to look like. So let's say, Joaquin, that I had gone and tried to knock on your neighbor's door. They weren't home. So now I come next door and it's your house. Now, let me show you guys what I do. So I knock on the door. Knock, knock. Hello. Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. They immediately go into the I don't want to be sold mode, right? So I say, I'm actually not here to try to talk to you about you buying or selling a house. I noticed that your neighbor's house was for sale and that they didn't sell it 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever it was. I noticed 3 months ago, they took their home off the market. I actually was trying to get a hold of them because here's the thing, you can say it as we, because meaning Century 21. We work with a lot of buyers in the area, and I wanted to find out if they're still thinking about selling their home. So do you know if they're thinking about selling still? Make it up. I don't care.
No, I don't know if they are or not.
You don't know if they are or not? Okay, no worries. So probably best thing would be if I could just talk to them. Do you know when's the best time to catch them at home? I mean, are they usually home?
They're home in the evenings.
Usually evenings are best.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you happen to have a phone number I could call them on?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, see, so notice what I'm doing is all, two things that I'm doing here. First thing is when I get to this house, so the next door neighbor's house, is I'm telling them, I'm not here to try to get you to buy or sell. I actually was wanting to get a hold of your neighbor. I knocked on the door, they weren't home. Do you know when the best time to catch them is? And they're gonna typically tell you, oh yeah, they're, like I say, if you say, I work with a lot of buyers in the area, or we work with a lot of buyers in the area, and I'm trying to get a hold of them because inventory is really low right now. And I just wanted to find out if they're still thinking about selling. Do you know if they're wanting to sell? So notice I'm just trying to find out. Now, here's what I have found. Depending on the neighbor, you will a lot of times get more information about that person from the neighbor than the actual person would tell you. Meaning, and part of it is, if they still are thinking about selling, the neighbor wants to be the hero. They want to be the one that, hey, I got a buyer for your house. So they'll typically be willing to talk to you, and if they know, and say, oh yeah, he had a job transfer, but with COVID, it got postponed. But now they're actually opening back up. They're probably going to be putting their house back on the market in the next 6 months. Awesome. Now I know I need to talk to that person, because now I just got some inside scoop on if they're going to be selling or not. Okay. Now, the other side of it happens too, that I knock on it and he says, oh yeah, he had a job transfer, but then with COVID, he lost his job and got a new one. And now the company he works for, they're just staying here. Okay. Well, then they're probably not necessarily moving. But that still doesn't mean I wouldn't go talk to them. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do here. Now, since I'm at the door though, then here's what I'm going to do. So now watch. So we'll go back to role play. So I've asked him, when's the best time to catch him? You told me, you've said you might have a phone number, blah, blah, blah. Then I'm just going to go, all right, well, as I said, Joaquin, we work with a lot of buyers in the area and there's not many houses for sale. What price would you be willing to sell your house for?
Then you just created that curiosity.
Yeah, so I'm going to either just ask, have you thought about selling? Or what I have found is I like to say to the people, at what price would you be willing to sell your house? Because here's what I'll tell you. Everybody's got a price. Now, it might not be realistic. His house might be worth 500,000 and he might say, I'd sell it for 2 million. Okay, well, whatever. That's fine.
Even if they don't have plans to move, if their neighbors are moving, they have a price.
Right.
Of
Exactly.
What,
So I usually will just say, hey, so like I said, we work with a lot of buyers in the area. What price would you be willing to sell your house for? And then they'll either go, well, we've thought about selling. Like I've found if you approach it that way, at what price would you be willing to sell it for? They don't feel like you're like to some extent, that's where they'd be a lot. It'd have to be for a lot. Okay, well, so have you guys thought about selling? And then I'm just gonna, so how long have you lived here? Where did you move from? How did you pick this area? Well, if you ever were to notice how it's just gonna kick right into that exact same thing we talked about on Tuesday. Okay. All right. So then I'm going to do that same thing with 3 to 5 houses that way. Cross the street. I'm going to ask the same thing there. Cross the street, ask it here. Then once I'm done with that area, I go to this house, knock on the door, 3 to 5 houses this way, 6 to 10 this way, 3 to 5 this way. And I'm doing the exact same thing. Now, when I go knock on their door, if they do answer, then I'm going to, hey, Joaquin, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. I work with a lot of buyers in the area. And I actually was looking to see like people who had tried to sell their home in the past. Notice you had your home on the market in the last 6 months and that you took it off. And I just was curious to see, would you still be willing to sell it if you could?
I can't say no to that.
Okay, so that's where so notice what I'm going to just say is I'm knocked on the door. I noticed your home is on the market. It came off. I just wanted to find out if you could still sell it, would you? And they're either going to say yes or no. If they say no, okay. Then if they say no, I'm going to say, well, if you had sold it, where were you going to go? Then they'll tell you why they have their home for sale so you can figure it out. So ultimately, that's how I'm going to approach these expires. And same concept. Oh, well, how long have you lived here? Well, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to, where'd you move from? How'd you pick this area? Well, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? And I'm just looking for, again, either an appointment or somebody that I can capture and put into that sphere of influence.
Hey Russ, could you possibly outline that in black? It's kind of hard to see.
Oh, yep, sorry.
You're fine.
There's not much to it though. I will tell you that. Actually, I should do this one. So here's the house, do 3 to 5 this way. So it's just 3 to 5 doors, 6 to 10 doors, 3 to 5 doors this way. So, and then you just do the same thing in each of those areas.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Now, like I said, then what you're gonna do, once you've got this all set up and saved, is the hard part that initially where you're going back in time is you're not finding the people who are really serious and motivated about moving necessarily. But as soon as you get this set up and you start doing it for the ones that happened expired the day before, that's where you're going to be right on it to where you're like, hey, I work with a lot of buyers and sellers in the area. And very few people are going to go knock on their door. Most are trying to call or they'll mail a letter or whatever. But if you'll pick an area, and the reason I say close to home, close to the office, or an area you want to work, is what I don't want you doing is driving all over the valley trying to find people to talk to. You get a concentrated area, it's easy to run over, hit those few doors, and then be done for the day kind of thing. Okay. All right. I think that's where we'll wrap for the day. What questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm just kind of excited to implement all this great information.
All right.
Again, I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I mean, I'm happy I'm here. I wish maybe you felt better because there was more.
No, I
people,
feel good.
you know?
It doesn't matter. I got people on Zoom too, so.
But
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
I had already planned on doing this week.
Cool.
You know? And
Okay.
I feel like, you know, like I
So,
said, you guys are giving us every resource we need, really.
Yeah. So I think what I'll do then for next week, like I say, I've been iffy on, I think what I'm gonna do is, and honestly, I don't know that I care that we have people necessarily here.
Right.
I just want to make sure we're getting good participation. So I think I may just send out an email and just say, who's gonna come to class on Tuesday? And if,
Yeah. I mean, because what you're talking about for next week, that's exciting for me
Yeah.
as well, you know?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I feel like
then we'll do it.
but pieces of a puzzle are falling right into
Good,
place. you know?
perfect. That's the idea, so. Okay, sounds good. Thanks,
Thank you, I
guys.
appreciate it.
See you later.